We're glad you're here, and we're looking forward to talking with you tonight. Just a couple items before we get started. First, we do have our administrative team on the call tonight. And in addition to those folks, we also have Roseanne Gardenier, who is our grades 8 through 12 high school student school nurse. And we have Carrie Shanahan and Katie Mungery from the Madison County Department of Health on the call as well. Everyone's mics are muted right now, and that's just to help the rest of the folks on the call better able to hear what is being discussed. So we just ask you to keep your microphone muted during the discussion. We appreciate it. Our process tonight is that we do have some new information to share that we will share with you. And then once that is completed, we will open up the floor to answer some of your questions. In order to participate and ask questions, we would just ask you to use the chat feature through Zoom, and our Director of Instructional Support, Karen Henner, will be monitoring the chat. And then when we get to that point in the session, she'll share those questions. You'll have the opportunity to ask the question yourself, or she can ask it on your behalf if you'd rather her do that. And finally, we are recording tonight's meeting, and we will post it to our website in the very near future. So with that, I'll again welcome you and thank you for being here, and I will turn things over to Mr. Becerra.
All right, thank you, Mr. Clancy. Good evening, everyone. We're glad that you're able to join us again. This is an extension of the process we started back in the summer. If you recall, every district in New York State was required to have sessions that engaged parents and community regarding the COVID-19 situation and the status of schools. This is not a requirement. We, at the time back in the summer, indicated to our community that we wanted to continue the process. While not a requirement, we thought it made good sense to be able to continue to try to answer questions, update you on things that were happening in the district related to our reopening plan, and just things that were of a timely nature that we should be addressing with you. We set this date back a number of days ago. We did not know that we would end up, the date would end up coinciding with what turned out to be our first positive case of a student for COVID-19 in the district. That happened earlier today. We were informed by the Madison County Health Department this earlier today that we did in fact have a positive case. At that point, after being informed in coordination with the county, we made the decision to dismiss our 4 through 12 students from school. That was out of an abundance of caution to make sure that we minimize contact and crossover between students while the contact tracing process unfolded. That was part of the process. That process continues, and Katie Mungery is going to be able to comment a little bit more on where everything stands related to the county's work and investigation. But the other part of this was we also were able to determine that our Southside and Peterborough students, both the classroom and busing situation, did not necessitate an early dismissal. So just to clear things up right at the beginning, Peterborough and Southside are functioning as scheduled tomorrow. They did for the balance of today. They will again tomorrow. Our Robert Street students and our junior, senior high students will be functioning on a remote schedule for tomorrow. We anticipate and are optimistic at this point that and hopeful that we will be able to reopen all 4 of our buildings on Thursday. But again, we will continue to update as everything is clarified. So at this point, I would ask if Katie could, if you could give us a summary from the health department standpoint of where the investigation process stands. Could you give us an overview of that?
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. So the Madison County Health Department, as Sean had mentioned, was alerted to a positive case of COVID-19 this morning. One of the case was identified to be a student of your school district. We immediately contacted the school district and began the contact tracing process that involves interviewing staff, interviewing the person, interviewing family members, and close contacts. After that, we proceeded to do an investigation where we reviewed the classes, the attendance schedules, the busing schedules, and all of the movements for that student. During that time, we identified anybody that was in close contact with that student, so anybody that would be at risk for catching COVID or being exposed to it and potentially developing it later on. Those people have all been contacted already. Through our investigation, we believe that we've identified anybody that is at risk, and they have been contacted and notified. We did get through everything today, so all of our investigation is considered complete at this point. If for some reason there is any concern or people are concerned that perhaps they didn't get a phone call or that they should be quarantined and we did not notify them, they can contact our office. And that phone number is 315-366-2361. And we would be happy to speak to them and review any potential risks that they think they may have had.
Okay.
Anybody that,
Go ahead, Katie.
Yep, just anybody that we did contact, so anybody that we believe came in contact or was potentially exposed has been put under a 14-day quarantine by the health department. So again, anybody that we believe is at risk has been quarantined.
And we appreciate that that quick response from the county. I know when we were notified this morning, I know the process immediately began and contact was almost immediate. So we appreciate that and appreciate your help and your colleagues' help. I do think it's important to point out, just to clarify, I think I've said it, I think Katie made that known in her comments, to be clear and just to dispel any confusion. Because again, sometimes you hear bad information floating around. We found out about this and we're coordinating with the health department this morning. If there had been any hint of this, in some cases, again, you hear strange things going around in days before. Well, that's simply not the case. I can assure you that we take immediate action when we have information that we needed to act on, and that information came to us this morning. So again, we appreciate Katie and all of the people at the health department helping us work through pretty quickly. We realized it wasn't an ideal situation because we had students here. Obviously, it would have been less disruptive if not, if we were aware of what was going on, before kids were here. But the timing of these tests, I think, it really depends as tests are processed and people are notified. And this was one of those cases where students were here. We did what we felt was the responsible thing by minimizing the time that the students were here and the opportunities for contact with students out of an abundance of caution. So with that being said, we will continue to update you. We will continue to confirm what we're hopeful that all 4 of our buildings will be open on Thursday once again. And Peterborough and Southside, to reiterate, are on the schedule that they were supposed to be on. They are not impacted by this temporary shutdown at Robert Street in the high school. And again, we will continue to update you with any changes to that schedule or timeline that we've outlined. We also wanted to continue to point out that the ongoing daily screening process is very important. We've had a number of questions from people on the screening process. It's a central part of our plan to keep people safe and to minimize exposure for staff and students. And one of our school nurses, Roseanne Gardenier, is on the call. And I'd like to ask Roseanne if she could give us some updated information or some clarification on what this process looks like, and any important points that she'd want to make based on some of the questions that she's been receiving in recent days. Roseanne, can you address that for us?
Certainly, Mr. Rosetta. I just want to thank all the parents who have really strived to get that screening in as quickly as possible. And I just want to reiterate how important it is that that screening is done prior to your child coming to school. It's very, very important. That should be done by 7:30 because every single nurse in every building goes through that list to assure that every child who is in the building in person has had that screening. It's very, very important. As a second step, we do temperature checks, but the first step starts with you, and it's very, very important that you get that done. And I know there's been a lot of questions. That very first question is, does my child have a fever or symptoms? If you are going to answer yes to that question, you can either answer yes to that question or just stop right there and give us a call. But we need a call. We need to be notified because it is a long list. And yes, all the symptoms on there, many of us experience sometimes on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. The problem is we can't diagnose what that is over the phone. And the doctor can't diagnose that over the phone. It may be something that your child has experienced before. It may not. And even just one of those symptoms could possibly be COVID. And so the only way we know that is for you to keep your child at home. So and we sent this home just recently, and on the left-hand side is the list of symptoms. And the symptoms are cough, difficulty breathing, sore throat, congestion, runny nose. And I know that you're experiencing that right now. We have a lot of students with allergies and asthma. However, this may be that, or it may be COVID. We don't know. So if your child is experiencing these, keep them home, give us a call. And yes, when you call us, we are going to encourage you to go see the doctor. It's very, very important. Will we ask you to do a COVID test? No, we are going to ask you to see your doctor, okay? When you see your doctor, it is between you and the physician as to whether or not that needs to be screened. Now, the important thing is, when you see that doctor, we need that note. In that note, we need it to say what the diagnosis is and whether or not you have been tested. So we need that note prior to your child coming back to school. So you get up in the morning, you check your child's temperature. Your child does not have a fever, but you ask your child, how are you feeling? Do you have any problems? And your child says, I have a sore throat. Give us a call. Leave a message. If it's early in the morning, that's okay. You leave a message. The nurse will call you right back as soon as she gets in her office. We will call you and ask you, what is the symptom? You tell us, and then we will ask you to see your doctor. Call your doctor immediately. I know a lot of the doctor's offices don't open until 9:15, but please call the doctor's office. They're very understanding. They know what the process is, and they are very accommodating. Some of them will do telehealth. Some of them will get you right in, depending on the symptoms. Be seen by the doctor. And then if your child has an alternative diagnosis and they've been tested for COVID, they will need to stay home until the test comes back negative, we hope. And we have had many, many people tested here. This process that we are asking you to do, every single one of us does. Every staff member, every faculty member, every teacher, every one of us goes through that same process. And yes, We have had many teachers, many staff members who have had one symptom and have been kept home, have seen the doctor, and have been tested. So we are going through this process too, just like you and your children. And we thank you for cooperating with us and working with us. I know it's frustrating, but we appreciate this because the important thing is that we are safe, that our children are safe, your children are safe, and that we are keeping everybody safe and healthy. So if your child is sick, has a symptom, you see the doctor. When they are feeling better, 100%, no fever without the use of medication for 24 hours and no symptoms for 24 hours, your child may come back with that doctor's note and negative COVID test. Now, the unfortunate thing is, if they come to school and unfortunately get sick while they're in school, we are going to ask that they have a COVID test. We are going to send them home, and we are going to ask that they be tested and not return until that negative test comes back. Because they have been in the school and they have been around other students and staff members and faculty, and we don't want to risk them spreading anything. So we are going to ask you to do a test. So it's very important that you check your child first thing in the morning. Make sure they are absolutely healthy. And it all starts with you, and we really appreciate your cooperation. If you have any questions about the symptoms, please don't hesitate to call your nurses, because that's what we're here for. We are here to answer your questions. Mr. Bezzetta?
All right, thanks for that summary. And again, I think you made some important points, that it's important to check how the students are doing in the morning, because if they are in school and they have symptoms or demonstrating symptoms at school, then that is going to necessitate a COVID test before they can return. And I think your other point, just to reiterate, was if somebody is, say wakes up and is not feeling well, then obviously they should stay home. But the doctor could be involved at that point. They can call you or one of our other school nurses to get guidance and to sort of navigate through that process, but it may not necessarily mean needing a test. It may just mean that there's some kind of clarification provided by the physician, correct?
Absolutely. But that needs to be written on the note, what the diagnosis is. Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. All right, and we appreciate that. And again, I can't emphasize enough the importance of doing this. We've again asked people to do this by 7:30 in the morning. Some people do it much sooner than that, and that's great. But every minute that we're losing because if we're having to track people down, that's a problem for us, because we can't just go about our business and pretend that we have adequate information if we don't. So it is essential that families partner with us in this process to make sure that we have information that verifies that everybody's safe and can be in the building. We get that sometimes things happen, or but that should be the exception and not a regular occurrence. And I'll echo what Mrs. Gardenier said, that we appreciate your cooperation. We know that this is, again, an example of the departure of our normal schedule, but nothing is normal at this point. And the reality of the situation is it's not going to be normal for some time. So we really need to make the best of it, and we really need to try to keep everybody healthy and safe. And we do that by being on the same page. So, so please continue to work with us on that. So we spent the first part of our session today talking about what's happened today and in recent days. We want to talk a little bit about something that I think is a positive development in looking forward. We've been engaged in recent days in conversations with our staff members and with looking at where we are a couple of weeks into the school year. If you recall, back in the summer, we said, we wanted to get the first few weeks under our belt. We wanted to assess where our numbers were with, how many students were in cohort 1 and cohort 2, how many students ended up being fully remote. We wanted to further examine the space available to us and our staffing levels at different buildings. so that we could make an informed decision about what was or wasn't possible. The ultimate goal has been to have as many students back in school with us as possible. But we also have said from the beginning that we would only do it if we can do it safely. And today is a perfect example of a situation where we did have a positive case, but we believe that the scope and reach of the impact of that positive case was minimized because the district has been strictly adhering to distancing standards and mask standards, staff and students. And we believe that that's paying off now. And big picture, while obviously we didn't like the news we got today, we're also realists in that we know that districts all over the state and all over the country have experienced positive cases. We're not alone. Many districts in our region have many or numerous cases within a building or within the district. So we know that that this might be a reality for some time. So we're doing all the things that are taking all the precautions to minimize that impact. Having said that, in looking at the big picture, we realize that our ultimate goal is still getting more kids back in school. We recognize the numerous benefits of having kids being able to access their peers and their teachers on a regular basis. We have been, as I said, looking at and analyzing all of the relevant information. And at this point, we'd like to announce that we're moving towards a reintroducing our students grades K through 3. So our Peterborough and our Southside elementary students, we're going to be moving to reintroduce all students K through 3 on a 5-day-a-week basis beginning October 26th, Monday, October 26th. Now, some people will say, why not tomorrow or why not next week? And the reality is it is a process. There's a lot to it. We're having to reconfigure rooms. We're having to work through with staff some of the adjustments we make because we realize it can't be business as usual. We don't have the size or the capacity to just have business as usual and adhere to the standards that we feel are important and are non-negotiable. We've assured the staff and we've assured parents that there was going to be no compromising as far as the standard. But we believe that we can still get our students being creative with the way that we use our rooms and the way that we utilize our staff where they can be accessible to their teachers. Now, some people might say, what about Robert Street and the junior senior high school? And our answer to that is we're continually evaluating all of our schools, but at this point, we're able to announce that the plan is for Peterborough and Robert Street to return fully on Monday, October 26th. There will obviously be more details that will be coming out, any adjustments that need to be made. Those are things that will be ongoing with our internal communication with our staff members. But we believe in consulting with our facilities department and our transportation department, and that we are able to accommodate the cleaning and the sanitization that's necessary. We're able to handle, based on the established transportation guidelines, we're able to transport those students K through 3 fully and still adhere to the guidelines that have been established. And at this point, because I think that's hopefully good news to a lot of people. I know it can't come soon enough, and I know some people were hoping it was yesterday, but we believe that we are giving people some lead time. We're giving our staff some adequate lead time because we still have to work out some things And we wanted to give our families some lead time so they can start planning accordingly. A day like today is also the perfect example of how things can change quickly. And so, the reality is some schools have had to shift for periods of time to a remote situation. That could be a possibility at some point, but the overall big picture is to try to take a move towards a more normal schedule, and this is an important step in that process. So I've been talking for a little bit. I'll ask Mr. Clancy or Mrs. Carnahan or any of our other administrators or nurses, what have I missed and what else do we want to note as far as the return for K-3 students?
Thank you, Mr. Becerra. I think you said this, and I'll reiterate. I think one of the natural questions is, why now? Why didn't we do this from the beginning? And I think the answer is that we needed to be conservative with our return to school. There was a lot of planning, a lot of time, a lot of effort that went into that process. There were a lot of rules, and there still are a lot of rules, and there were a lot of considerations. And, as a district, as a community, we wanted kids back in school, but we wanted to make sure we were doing that safely. And what we've learned over the last few weeks is that we did that well. And I think we're at a position now where we're ready to plan for that next phase and bringing kids back to school, more students back to school. And if I think about some of the pieces of feedback that I've received from families, I think this approach, this next step, is a good way to address some of those questions and concerns around those days when students are remote and they're home, this hybrid model. What's happening on those days. We've made a plan and we're doing our best to accommodate it, but it's not the same as having kids in school working directly with our teachers. So I'm excited about it. And, there's certainly a lot of work and a lot of planning and preparing that we have to do to make that happen. But I'm glad we're discussing it as a district, and I think it's a logical and meaningful next step.
And that's an important point that Mr. Clancy made. And as he stated, we were intentionally conservative with our initial approach because we just did not want to have rooms bursting at the seams or buses overloaded. And we do think that the conservative approach made sense and got us off to, what's been, all things considered, a pretty good start. We understand it is incredibly difficult. For example, on hybrid days when students are remote, that is difficult. We understand that it's a heavy lift. It's tough for parents. It's tough for kids. It's tough for teachers. And so that is why we think it's worth the effort to try to make this work, even if it has to be a little different than what we're used to. We still think that is going to help us in the big picture. Other thoughts or points from any of our administrative team that we've missed? Okay. So I know we've had questions. We tried to talk about some of the most frequently asked questions. Certainly some of the questions that came today, we tried to answer that in our comments. But I'll ask Mrs. Henner if she wants to share with us some questions or have some people ask directly their questions.
Okay, yep, thank you. We have one question I think would probably be best served by maybe Carrie Shanahan or Katie Mungari answering this question. Comes to us from Pat, and I'm going to ask Pat now to unmute as he asks his question. Go ahead, Pat.
I was just wondering, because my child was quarantined today because of this, if my other child in the house can go to school still.
Katie, did you want to get this question?
Yep, absolutely. So quarantine is based on exposure. So we do not believe that your other children were exposed. So as long as your family is able to quarantine that child away from the rest of the family, then yes, your other children should be fine to attend school. They should obviously, your quarantine child will need to be monitored, and we do that through the health department. We'll contact every day and talk to anybody that's been quarantined every day to monitor for symptoms to make sure that they don't develop anything that we think might become COVID. And then as long as that, you know, stays, your quarantine child stays healthy, there should be no additional action for your family.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Pat, for that question. It was a great question. In response to some of the students that may be coming back, I have a question from Megan. So there are two Megans in this list. I'm going to ask both to unmute themselves, asking a question about the remote learners. Go ahead, Megan. Don't see her unmuting herself. So I'm going to ask the question on behalf of her. So she's wondering if we bring back the students K through 3, if that means that the students who are currently remote only learners will have to come back, or can they still remain remote learners for the school year?
Yep, that's a good question, and I should have been more specific in my earlier explanation. The return for K-3 students is, we're speaking about our current hybrid learners. So the students who are in cohort 1 and cohort 2, those would be the students who would be returning on October 26th. The remote students will remain in that remote setting. That is still an option that will remain an option, and those students will remain in that setting. So it is, again, just cohort 1 and cohort 2 students who would be returning. Those, you know, students who are already in the buildings on at least a 2-day-a-week basis. Anything else I forgot in that, Mr. Clancy? Or okay. Good question. I should have been more specific earlier.
And this question just came in, but it's directly related to that. It's from someone who, let's see, it's HR. I'm going to ask HR to unmute themselves and ask their question about hybrid learners.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's still going to be an option for hybrid. Honestly, I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with 5 days yet.
Yeah, I think that's a conversation maybe we need to have, you know, with the building principal regarding circumstances. I think the overwhelming response we got was the vast majority of people who were having their students hybrid or were comfortable with having them in school. If the standards of distancing and masks and all of those things were in place, overwhelmingly, the vast majority of people wanted them back as much as possible. So if there are unique cases, then I think that is something that should be talked about with a, you know, directly with the building principal as far as those circumstances.
Looks like we might have time for maybe one more. I'm going to ask Maria Strong to unmute herself and ask her question.
Hi, I'm just wondering if students have sniffles and they're having runny nose during cold season, are they staying home from school and staying out of school until their symptoms resolve, which, you know, is going to be all winter?
All right, Mrs. Gardner, probably the person to answer that.
Well, hopefully we're taking our vitamin C and we're doing all those things that we need to do to try to prevent from getting those colds. And you know, we all experience runny noses at times, especially when you're out in the cold weather. I don't expect that all students are going to be out the whole time because of runny noses. You know your child, and if your child is experiencing something that is unusual for them, that's when they need to stay home. It's kind of using your judgment as a parent. You know, as adults, you know, sometimes, I know sometimes when I eat, my nose will run sometimes, and it's just kind of a natural thing. It's if your child has a runny nose that is, you can't take care of with medication, that is not normal, not their baseline, then yes, they will need to stay home until that symptom goes away. And that's why a phone call to your nurse is extremely important, because we know your child. Many of the nurses have been here for a while, and we know your child, and you know your child. And so we can have that discussion. And, you know, the best thing to do is give us a call and let us know what is happening, and we'll have that discussion and then go from there. Is that okay, Marie?
That's good. One follow-up question. If the child does have to get COVID tested, are there any like local places that are doing the rapid tests?
I know currently, and the other ladies from the Department of Health can let me know if there's any others. We do know of one in Utica, but unfortunately there's not anything rapid right now. Madison County is wonderful. They have been working with the Upstate Mobile Clinic, which does have a fairly quick turnaround. We have been, all of the nurses have been giving information out as often as we receive it, whenever those clinics come by. So maybe the Department of Health ladies can let us know when that is happening next.
I would love to, actually. We have the mobile clinic will be here on the 1st, which is Thursday. They'll be in Wampsville from 3 to 7, and they are taking appointments now. So I can share that information to get pushed out to everybody after this. I can pass that along.
And I
The
believe
other
we
thing,
put that out too. I believe that information has been distributed, I believe.
I think it was distributed, and it is on our website as well, the date and the time and the phone number and a website link. So that's right on our website. Just scroll down about halfway. Madison County COVID-19 mobile testing, Thursday.
yep, and the other thing,
We post. Sorry, go ahead, Katie.
oh, no problem. I was just going to share, there's a link on the New York State Department of Health website. It's called the COVID-19 Test Site Finder. You put in your zip code and it brings up all the testing sites close to you. And it's a great option if you're not quite sure what's closer to you. Some people are willing to go certain places over others. So it gives you a good outline of all of the testing options available, and you can just kind of see how far out different things are. Most of our testing is coming back relatively quickly right now. So depending on, you know, a lot of things like demand and how many tests they're working through, we're seeing, you know, 3 days turnaround time for a lot of the testing. So we're hoping it stays within that time frame.
Yeah, and the good thing is most of our hybrid students, they are coming like once every 3 days. So if your child does get tested, there's a very limited chance of them actually missing very many in-person days. So even if they've been tested and you have to wait for that testing, chances are they're only going to miss one in-person day. So that's the good thing about that. And the Well Now in Oneida does do testing.
Okay. Great, thank you for that. So, you know, there are several options, and again, I know you can keep referring to our website. We'll continue to share those informations as the mobile sites are up. Hopefully that is a help to to our families. And we want to thank looking at the clock, and I know we have some time constraints and people needing to go in different directions. But I want to thank our families and everybody who has continued to participate. We want to thank you for your support. I know that days like this, definitely they're curveballs, and it means that there are a lot of things happening quickly. I think hopefully it is reassuring to you that I can assure you that any of the decisions we make are not based on what is necessarily the easiest decision, but what we think is the right thing. Today was an example of something that wasn't easy. We knew that to some degree that was going to cause, a lot of disruption to people's day. We're not intentionally trying to drive people crazy with curveballs. But based on the information we had, we felt that was the responsible thing to do. So we appreciate that, the vast majority of people have been very supportive of that. And we appreciate your understanding and cooperation. And we're going to continue to ask for you to partner with us in this process, and that we know there'll be speed bumps and it's not always going to be smooth, and we're going to have these types of days. But we think big picture, we're looking forward to the days like October 26th, when hopefully we can welcome our students back, not completely in a normal way, but closer to normal than we are. We're hopeful that if we continue to do what we think is good practice in trying to hold COVID at bay, that these speed bumps will not prevent us from moving to a more normal situation. But it means that we need people to cooperate. We really need every single person to cooperate on the screening process. We need people to be checking their kids, calling our nurses, or calling, in some cases, the health department if they think that there's something that's critical that needs to be known. We have to continue to connect the dots to make sure that we're doing everything we can to be as normal as we can, because we've been doing this for a while now, and things have not been normal since March. And so we really need to make the educational process as close to normal as possible, because our kids need it. And so again, thank you for that. We will be providing you more information about the reopening process that we talked about generally tonight. We will share with you probably in a pretty consistent basis leading up to the October 26th date in the next few weeks. We'll also continue to update you, and I anticipate we'll be putting out more clarification tomorrow regarding our status for a full reopening on Thursday. So hopefully we can confirm that. But in any event, Peterborough Street and Peterborough and Southside will be functioning as they were scheduled to function tomorrow. What did I miss? Anybody on our administrative team or Mrs. Gardner? Any other thoughts that you'd like to get out now?
I just want to thank everybody. It was phenomenal today. Everybody worked together so wonderfully, from the Department of Health, the nursing team, administration, teachers, students. Everybody worked very, very well today. And I just want to thank everybody for a wonderful team effort. And it's just a phenomenal group. Thank you.
I just wanted to add that all of the actions that you've all been taking and your children have been taking really minimized what could have been a lot more children could have been affected. So what you're doing is working. And I think all of the measures and all of the sacrifices you as a school and you as parents are making really helped minimize the spread of this disease. So, through our investigation today, we really found minimal exposures. So what you're doing in your sacrifices is working. And I would just encourage you to keep that up, because it really is making a difference, and you really did everything that you could. So I would applaud all of you for your actions.
Thank you, Katie. We appreciate your help. Certainly you, health department was terrific working with us through this process. And Mrs. Gardner, again, as always, thank you. We always appreciate your expertise. And I think it looks like we have a pretty good response to to this call or to this video conference. And so I think we'll still look at, as long as people are showing up, we'll try to schedule some more of these. I think that'll be helpful in just keeping people updated and hopefully trying to answer questions that are timely and give you information that's timely. So with that, I will again thank everybody and hope everybody has a good night and stay healthy, and we will stay in touch, and let's hope for very few speed bumps in the coming days and weeks, and as we try to get back to normal. Thank you very much. Good night.